Welcome to the Cherry Picker After Dark, the Patreon exclusive bonus episode of the Cherry Picker After Dark, where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry, and with me as always is...
Eddie of Edward's Truth, that pain will be exquisite. I didn't have a quote.
I mean, that was fine. You couldn't blood with it. And as always, we've got our themed episode for the month. It is October, spooky season. And we decided that we're going to rank the slashers today. Yeah. And we compiled a list of... There's 36. There was some criteria here, and I don't even remember what we were talking about. But I know that... Okay.
Yeah.
What the definition of what makes a slasher, that was one thing. Sure. But then we also wanted to kind of stick to just the movies that we've already covered over the 86 episodes or so at this point that we've done. And then also incorporating the final girl ranking that we did for the Cherry Picker After Dark a while ago, and just sort of like who are the slashers against those types.
Yes.
So... We've come up with 36. If you're watching the video version of this, you can see them on the screen here, if you can make them out. But yeah, I'm really excited for this, and we're jointly ranking them. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I haven't done that in a hot minute. That's going to be fun.
We haven't. Yeah, I think. Well, we did it for the Final Girl ranking.
We did,
and we did it for season 1 of Buffy. And
we learned from that experience.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm feeling very like calm and contentious right now that I could really get into it with you, but in like the most chill way, you know?
Okay, yeah, totally. Absolutely. That's the Zack Cherry way.
Sure.
chill, yet contentious.
I think that
should be your tagline.
I think they just call that passive aggression.
Right. Oh my God, there's nothing hidden about your agenda, Zack Cherry.
But yeah, I know I'm a straight shooter. But yeah, so if you are if this is a Patreon exclusive, obviously, so we do have the free preview. So at a certain point, we will end the episode for the preview. And if you want to continue, you can hop over to my Patreon and support me over there, support us on the podcast. And on the Freddy Krueger tier, you will get access to this episode in both audio and video format. You'll also get access to all of the past episodes. I don't even know how many there have been, like over 15. At this point, the Final Girls ranking episode will be there, and that's a lot of content. Like, it's hours of stuff. if you
can't get enough,
if you want more from us, yeah. But before we kind of get into things here, we're gonna kind of like ease our way in, and we've wanted to like just catch up on just like what's been going on. We're in the month of October. This is obviously like prime time spooky season shit going on here, and we've seen some movies. We don't know if we'll ever do specific podcast episodes for these movies in particular, but we just wanted to chat about them because even if we don't, it'll be a while before we get to them. Sure. So I just wanted to kind of like just talk about the movies that have come out recently, just like horror movies, and what our opinions are on them. And I know like the two big ones that we've both now seen are Socks, otherwise known as Saw X, and Exorcist Believer. But if there are any other movies that you've seen that you wanted to lead with, like new releases, I'm interested in hearing.
No, I actually haven't been in a theater in so long. It was a lovely thing to see them both in the same day, actually.
You did the Barbenheimer, but the...
Yeah, right.
What would you call the Soxorcist?
Soxorcist Believer. Oh my God, it was instantaneous. You got it as soon as you asked the question.
Well, no, because there was, like, The Exorcist Believer was going to be released on Friday the 13th. Yeah. And then the Taylor Swift concert was slated for that day. So Blumhouse got nervous and they pushed Exorcist forward. And there was a meme of just being like, oh, you missed out on a really good opportunity to market the Exor-Swift.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, that's it. Like, people love gimmicks like that. Like, they could have totally sold that. People have been like, we're going to go see this movie about exorcisms and then finish off with a Taylor Swift concert, or vice versa.
Yeah. The thing is, like, I mean, now people are going to be looking to do that, but the thing about the Barbenheimer was it was so not, like, premeditated. It just kind of, like, happened. It was something the people sparked, and I think that's why it was so successful. I don't know if... It'd be interesting to see if that kind of thing can happen again, if it's, you know, done with, like, Barbenheimer in the rearview mirror, and now it's like, okay, so we're going to have, you know, whatever we're going to have.
I could see it, like, every summer, that'll be, like, a thing that happens.
Yeah, maybe it'll be a thing now. It's kind of sad because we were so innocent before Barbenheimer. It felt so authentic, you know, like one of the good things that the Exorcist, that the internet, Freudian slip, that the internet brought about into existence.
Yeah, I mean, and I haven't seen Oppenheimer.
Me neither.
Mostly because
I haven't seen Barbie yet either.
I saw Barbie. I didn't find it funny. Actually, John Carpenter recently, I guess he was asked about it, and he's just like, yeah, I saw Barbie, and I didn't get it. Like, just the most John Carpenter, like, answer he could say. He's just like, something about, like, you know, she doesn't have a vagina, and then at the end she's going to a gynecologist. And it's just like, great, I'm glad people love it. It's just not for me.
Spoilers.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I mean, I did just tell you I hadn't seen it yet, but okay, whatever. It's okay.
It's a John Carpenter. It's relevant. But it's him just being like giving his most like cynical grandpa response. And I mean, like, I was right there because I went to see it and it was enjoyable. But I didn't get the hype. I wasn't like, I didn't understand it. And that's how I felt. I walked out of it. I'm just like, Jesus, movies are not being made for me anymore. And it's sad. I probably would have enjoyed Oppenheimer a lot more. It's just the prospect of like a 3-hour sit in a theater. And especially like if you're doing it like the double feature, your Barbie is 2 hours. Oppenheimer's 3, not to mention like the trailers and all that, and just the day around it, like it's a commitment.
Yeah, absolutely.
But enough about that. So I haven't really seen a whole lot either. In fact, I've missed a lot of releases. A lot of things have been released on streaming as well, and I haven't I haven't had time or anything because I've been busy. But I did catch Totally Killer, which
I've been seeing people post about that. I haven't seen it yet either.
Yeah, and the whole shtick with that is it's like the next in line of the comedy being what I like to call like the bubblegum pop slasher movies. They're like the remakes of the like old comedies or like comedies from the 80s or whenever that have been updated for as a horror movie essentially. So you had Happy Death Day was Groundhog Day, Freaky Friday, and this is supposed to be Back to the Future. And I liked it. I enjoyed it. I think it's probably like I think that it deserved a theatrical release. I didn't love it. Like I had issues with some of the things with the movie and just like the trajectory or the characters or where they went with it. And even just sort of like as a slasher movie in and of itself, because obviously like all of these things are trying, like it all comes back to Scream, and it's never going to be successful in that regard if you're trying to do a Scream type movie. But I think in terms of like that ilk of movie of just like taking the 80s comedy, or Freaky's not 80s, but just like, you know, putting it into a slasher. I'm not a huge fan of that style, but I think that this was pretty decent. I enjoyed it, and I liked the actress who she was on the Sabrina show, but she was I remember her most as playing Beatty Hyman in the Feud. Betty Davis's daughter.
Learning who can't act and who's like got Susan Sarandon going when she says her lines.
She can act, but she's just acting as someone who can't act.
She plays the daughter who can't act.
One of these days we're gonna do Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. But yeah, I had an opportunity to see The Nun 2. I still haven't seen the first one, and I just like whatever, I missed it. I'll at some point.
I mean, I've heard
them.
somewhat favorable things about it. People saying it's not as bad as you'd expect, but that doesn't mean it's good, you know. So, and you don't know what I'm expecting. Like I don't know what I'm expecting with that movie.
So okay, so then there's really just two movies to talk about here. So which one do you want to talk about first? Saw, Exorcist. Exorcist. Okay, let's
do Exorcist. Let's lead with that one.
You go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it started out actually pretty strong. I was in everything that was going on between. I can't remember the girl's parents anymore. Girl's parents. See, the girls' names. It was. Do you remember their names?
It's not important. It's
okay.
actually Angela and Catherine.
Angela and Catherine. Okay. So Angela,
yeah.
everything that was going on with Angela's parents was, I thought, kind of engrossing, and it was it had echoes of like the original Exorcist without being like, you know, like a strict kind of like, look at what we're doing the thing the original movie did, even though they were, but not. Like I was just kind of like, oh, there's a protective spell over the child, that seems interesting about it. Okay. Then we get out to present day, and I'm invested. I'm like, oh, her mother, and oh, she, you know, all that. And then there was a misstep, I felt, in that the girls went out to the forest to summon deities or whatever, and then after that, they're like both possessed. And I was like, that has never been a component of these movies where somebody like went out and caught it, you know, like, or at least not the installments that I'm fond of.
And it was
like,
that was so underwritten in a way. Like it was we never really delved into where, I mean, I know that they were planning on doing a trilogy. I cannot see that happening at this point, but maybe that was something that would have been addressed in the Deceiver. Or whatever it was going to be, but yeah, there was so much, like, we'll refrain from spoiling anything, but it just, like, I felt like that was very half-baked. I felt like the fact that, like, there's not really an exorcism in the movie either.
I mean, oh God, my sister. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. When the people stand shoulder to shoulder, in essence, to the people from all different walks and who have different connections to the different girls or whatever, and the group kind of solidifies and decides, you know, we're all going to do this together. My sister said out loud, "Evil dies tonight." And I was like, it is. It is.
Well,
Jesus Christ.
It's funny that you mentioned Halloween Kills, because this. Is the same writer as Halloween Kills. His name is Scott Teems. He, as far as I'm concerned, like the last 4 movies he's done have all been misfires. And I'm not trying to say anything negative about the person. For all I know, he's a lovely person. But dear God, I mean, Halloween Kills. And I know some people like that, but I'm just speaking from like a story, like a screenwriting standpoint here. Halloween Kills, Firestarter, the remake, Insidious, what's it called, The Red Door, and now this, and it's just like, what does he have on Blumhouse? Like, he's got some dirt on.
Or it's just a tight friendship. Like, I mean, again, it's like who you know in the business. If you have access, they'll let you fail upwards if you want in Hollywood.
And and I mean, like, it's Blumhouse. Like, let's be honest. Like, a lot of the Blumhouse movies are crap. But you, like, specifically mentioning the Evil Dies Tonight of it all, because that's kind of what I felt, because we started the movie off and we were following Leslie Odom Jr.'s character. And I didn't even know what his name is. There was like one scene where someone said Victor, and I'm like, and I wasn't even thinking, what is his name? It's just like someone finally said it. I'm just like, oh, is that his name? But the whole like first half of the movie, and I'll agree, I wasn't blown away, but I was kind of engrossed in the first act of the movie, even though like it was mostly shown in the trailer. But there was like, it's still like, it felt like there was a mystery. We were setting up a mystery regarding the disappearance of the girls and all that. And as soon as Ellen Burstyn kind of comes in, Leslie Odom Jr.'s character just completely gets sidelined. He's there, but he's completely irrelevant for the rest of the movie. And instead, we have these characters that you're talking about. One of them is played by Ann Dowd, who was Joan from Hereditary. It's just like this collection of all these people, and it really did give me a Halloween Kills feel of just like, now we're just like, it's like not necessarily vignettes, but it's just like all of these unimportant people who have now kind of congregated to be the main focal point, while the people who should be the heavy hitters, who should be moving the story along, like Leslie Odom Jr.'s character and like Ellen Burstyn, are just completely like whatever, pushed to the side. And
it was also completely disorganized. Like, I kept thinking about, if you're going to emulate the first movie, one thing the first movie did particularly well was expand its resources, explore every possibility, but they did it in like a chronology. Like, okay, this didn't work, so let's move on to this person. This didn't work, let's move on to this person. You could have taken us down avenues we haven't seen yet from, the first movie, or even like had somebody, I don't know, just take it and make a different decision. But what they did was kind of like have everybody at once, and whoever wanted to kind of stepped in and chimed in, and it didn't work, but they all stayed together, and it just made it feel like, could we get I'm a Virgo. Can we get some organization people, like stand in line, each one of you gets a turn, because you're all just half-assing it at this point, to the point where I don't really know what you guys are doing here. And I don't think you do either. It just felt like, let's just, as long as we do it together. And I'm like, no, it's not going to work. That's not going to work here.
Yeah. Well, there was a line somewhere about like how, like what I took away from it is just that like God is just like exists in all sorts of religions, and so does the devil. Sure. And it was just sort of this idea of just like, we can have all of these people together, and it's just sort of like the power of all of us combined will, somehow make this work. And the thing is, like, it was so half-baked. And there was a thing, the woman who the neighbor like had in his house. That whole bit was just weird to me.
Oh, God.
How he came home, but he went to visit her. She was in a graveyard, and I was just like, I really have to go to the bathroom. I think if I get up now, I'm not going to miss anything. So I did, and I was literally gone like 2 minutes, and I came back, and then all of a sudden they were all like in the backyard, and the Ann Dowd character was just like, okay, we're doing this. And then it was just like proceeded into the rest of the movie. And I just felt like, where was the connection? Like, where was the second act of like, what was going on here? So, and then the last thing I'll say is just that the movie has no atmosphere. It's devoid of any sort of horror or tension. And that's the thing is, like, this is what I've always seen from David Gordon Green as a director. We've talked about it in like the Halloween 2018 movie, and a lot of people really love that movie, and I think it's fine. But I've seen this thing. It's like, he decided to become a horror director after doing Pineapple Express and whatever. I've never seen a single movie that he's done other than the horror movies that he's done for Blumhouse. And it seemed like, at least there was a passion behind Halloween that, he, wanted to make these movies. Like, he's a fan of these movies. And the sense that I always got from him is that just because you love horror movies doesn't necessarily mean you understand them. And that's kind of what I got from him. Like, his direction, especially in like Kills and Hens, were just like, what are you trying to do here? It was a little bit more focused in Halloween, even though there's decisions made in that movie, and you can listen to those podcasts. We don't have to get into them, but it just this really kind of solidified to me. It's almost like, when you, not that I don't like David Gordon Green, but just like when there's someone that you just like have a bad feeling about, and you tell all your friends, and they're just like, no, they're great, and then finally like, here we are years later, and everyone's just like, oh my God, David Gordon Green. And I'm over here like...
And you're like...
I mean... I was trying to tell you. I'm the crazy Ralph. I'm the one being like, you're doomed.
I mean, you are. Yeah. But for me, you're the canary in the coal mine. But for me, I think it was more gradual, not as gradual. I don't know a lot of people who are reacting favorably to this movie. But I won't unpack everything. We already talked about it with the Halloween series. What I will say about this movie is I feel I'm in total agreement with you in terms of just him. I that was a strong feeling I got, that David Gordon Green doesn't understand what these movies, what this franchise is kind of like built upon. He's kind of shape-shifting with, his collaborators, something new. But the thing is, you need to, it's walking a tightrope when you make a film in an already long established franchise, like for better or worse, like the directions that it's taken in whatever the last movie was. You have to determine what you're going to glom onto, and what you're going and reward, your audiences with for, like recognition's sake, or even just for like the sake of like continuing this story. And also keep it fresh, so you're not just recycling the same things and doing, here's your Easter eggs, here's your fandom rewarded. It's a fine line, and I didn't feel like he was even on the tightrope in this particular instance.
There's no Easter egg sort of thing, and that's like, I'm not a fan of that. I'm not like when it was the greatest hits, just throw all the shit in there. But clearly people do love that. I mean, that's like Scream 6. They're just like, it's Easter eggs galore. And I think that might be a reason why this is being poorly received. And the thing is, like, the Halloween movies, like, for better or worse, like, even like as up to Hens, that still has a fan base. Like, these are polarizing movies where you're either on one end or the other. And it just seems with Exorcist, it's just unanimously like, this is not good. I was actually having this conversation with Eric Champney, one of my Patreon supporters, and he had said that just like even bringing up Scream 6, because I've obviously been very hard on that movie, but he brings up a really good point, that it's just like the fact that it is polarizing and that there are people on like either ends, like it actually speaks to the success of the movie, because there is an argument being had. It's divided people in a way that they can have these discussions. It's not just like everyone coming together and be like, this was great, and then the movie just kind of being forgotten about, or this was terrible, and that like it, and this is the thing where it's just like, sometimes the most successful movies are the ones that people can disagree on, because if everyone is in agreement and just being like, this is so good, those are the movies that often get forgotten about. And the ones that everyone says are so terrible, sometimes those get a later life of just, it's just almost like it was made too soon. I don't think that's going to be the case for this movie. I think that this was just a soulless cash grab. And I mean, to David Gordon Green's defense, I don't even know if he wanted to do it. Like, that it might have been something where Jason Blum just came to him and said, I want you to do this. I'm prepared to give you this amount of money to do it. Because from what I've seen, David Gordon Green is not even committal to doing a second or third in this trilogy. He's already kind of moving back to what he was doing before, and probably for the best.
That's good.
Yeah,
I agree. Because also another thing, like, there were so many decisions that were made that I'm not critical of the decisions in and of themselves, but like the idea to have two girls possessed at the same time. Some people like flat out were just kind of like, but for me it was like the problem was in the execution. Like, they were both almost kind of like existing in two separate movies. Like, even the way that the manifestation of the possession, it's like the collaborators couldn't agree on. We went from kind of like what I think is a rather pedestrian approach with Angela, just kind of like, symptoms coming up. She's, home, she's acting strange with her father and everything like that. He's got these increasing suspicions, but not in a way that feels natural, or that I felt like I could follow, especially because I have the first movie to compare it to. And then you got the second one where we barely spend that much time with Catherine, but all of a sudden we're in mass.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, interesting scenario. And she's seated among her younger siblings, and she's embarrassing her family. And there's also this motif of like, these good Christian people kind of congratulating themselves and feeling so good, so quick to just kind of like release, like what happened to her and just be grateful she's back, and I'm like, that felt more evocative of something to me. I would have liked to have seen more decisions made in, like that felt like a point of view. It felt like there was like something new that was kind of like being commented on that still felt very connected with Exorcist as an idea. And then all I'll say about Ellen Burstyn, I just think they did her dirty. I was watching it, and when what happened, when what goes down went down, my sister and I both put our arms out like to the screen and went like, "What?" and then all I'll say is the last, 10 seconds, 15 seconds of the movie.
Yeah.
I will say, I wept because they're just that good. And it was like, if this could have happened, why couldn't this be more of a movie?
It's very much, it's, now that I think of it, you know what that reminds me of? Which a movie that I still haven't seen, but I just know what it is, and that's the Craft Legacy. Which, I mean, I think we've talked about that. We talked about it in the Craft episode.
We did.
And honestly, like if you don't, skip ahead 20 seconds if you don't want to be spoiled by the Craft Legacy. But yeah, Nancy is in the movie to just show up at the very end and she's in an asylum just to see that she's the mother of the girl in the movie, and that's it. She doesn't do anything, and it's just like, what is this? Does Blumhouse not learn from the mistakes that they make?
No, it's
clearly
the laziest.
Yeah,
it's the laziest, most kind of like, hey, we've got this thing, this this thing that's gonna like blow their minds. It's like, no, you've just frustrated me. All you've done is frustrate me because you had the means to tell a much better story, and you chose not to because again, I've been criticizing the film industry at large, and Lord knows there's a lot of criticism I have these days, but for like at least the last decade and probably more, this universe building idea, this idea of like, well, we'll save it and pay it off later, when so infrequently does it ever get paid off in a way that satisfies me. And I predict that if David Gordon Green, I'm hearing rumblings that he is being released of his
shepherded out of the
yes, he's being shepherded away from the Exorcist franchise. They still want to make their sequels.
I mean, well, they spent $400,000 to get the rights from Warner Brothers, and who knows how much they paid Ellen Burstyn for her limited role. That was a lot. I also love how Jason Blum was like gloating about it. He's just like, I can make anything. I can get Robert Englund to play Freddy again. I got Ellen Burstyn to come out of retirement, and just like barely. She basically had to fleece you in order to like.
She basically just spent her day on set. Like, I mean, like learning lines, that's nothing, and she just kind of walked around and just said the lines. Not that she wasn't invested, but it wasn't. It was like, okay, I'm done.
She didn't need to be in the movie, and if anything, like her being in the movie made it worse because it just took away from. Like the character trajectory for Victor, if that was even his name, of where that could have gone. But and then the last thing I'll just say about Exorcist Believer is that I actually don't think that it's it's terrible, and it's probably one of not the worst horror movie of the year, but I feel that it's still like along the same lines as everything that's been coming out. Like it's all like everything that I've seen this year has been so mediocre. And I'm not just saying that to be controversial. I actually it's very few and far between that a movie has come out, and even like the best horror movies that have come out, I don't think are any better than like a 3.5 star rating on Letterboxd. This is just my opinion. Okay. And I think that the reason why people have turned against The Exorcist is because there was an expectation behind it, and that expectation wasn't meant, and that because this is a requel, essentially. Yeah. And I think that this is the idea of this, but it's just like everything that we saw in Exorcist Believer, like outside of like the requel aspect of it, like it's the same shit that we're getting in everything else. So it's interesting that this movie is being attacked, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it definitely deserves every criticism that it's received. But I really hope that this is the beginning of the end of the requel, because I just want the honest to goodness sequels again. I put a thing on Twitter of just like, what is your preferred Halloween timeline? And I'm gonna ask you that because my preferred timeline is actually 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, because even though those movies are ridiculous and audacious as they get to like that, they're not pretentious. They don't come in and they don't act like we're better than everything that's come before. It's just like, we're not as good as the original Halloween. They understood what they were doing. They understood the assignment, and it allowed them to just be batshit crazy, and for Donald Pleasance to just be there and do his thing. And there's a certain element of camp that comes with it. And I just think that with like even H2O moving into Resurrection, and then Rob Zombie coming in and doing his thing, and then the Blumhouse trilogy, it's this idea that like this is the continuity timeline, like this is the one, and it starts off with good intentions, and then every single time for the H2O timeline, the Rob Zombie remake timeline, and this new one, it's almost always, for everyone, most people, ends poorly. You know?
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I actually, sorry if it sounds like an echo chamber, folks, but my Halloween timeline is also 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, preferred. Just because, like, I can watch that timeline with all its ups and downs and not be left feeling unfulfilled by the end of it. And that is saying something with the way that, whether you're watching the producer's cut or whether you're watching the theatrical release of Curse of Michael Myers, I think that's saying something, because, you know, that's kind of an unsatisfying ending, whichever one you're watching, but it's not anywhere near as, it's kind of like, well, the last few minutes are not what they could be of both of those cuts, as opposed to sitting through Resurrection, or sitting through Rob Zombie Halloween 2, or sitting through a lot of kills and Hens, all of Hens. Well, you know, not all of Hens. I liked the first third. We established that. Yeah. But because when I return to those movies, like, also I get atmosphere from 1, 2, 4, 5, and even 6. Like, I get.
Oh, 6 has incredible atmosphere.
Yeah. So it's the investment is not in vain for me, and a lot of the mistakes. I mean, I've always loved 1 and 2. 4, I really come to appreciate over the years, and 5, I've always loved. And
4 and 5
6,
is our candy.
6.
Movie. Yeah.
5 is absolute candy. Yeah. But 6 is like it. I can admire the fanfic aspect of it, you know, like it's the kind of movie I think I would have made when I was the age at the time that it got released. You know, I don't think I might have made some different choices, but do I think my movie would have been better? Absolutely not. I would have incorporated other weird explanations, because you have to tie this up, and, you know, what happened there, and why is this, and everything. I just would have made different mistakes, but I think it would have been just as passionate. And I will take passionate mistakes over just an empty husk, you know?
Yeah. All right. This is going on long, but Saw X.
Yes, it is.
What
did you think about that?
Okay. This is very conflicting, because I've been starting to like currently marathoning the Saw movies, and I saw Saw X, and there are aspects of it that I think are really well executed, and there are things that I just did not like at all. And so I'm kind of like in the middle there, like whether that's like a 2.5 rating or a 3. I think I might lean more towards 3. What I liked is that it felt like a Saw movie. It felt like the original run of Saw movies, at least. I love seeing John Kramer. I love seeing Amanda. I think that they're definitely the strength of this franchise, and I think that a problem with the movies after 3 largely is that, I mean, they killed all these people up. They killed off the most interesting people of that franchise, and we were kind of left to get like little cameos from them later on. So it was nice to see them here. Did they necessarily serve any greater purpose other than just being there? I don't think so. This is technically what they would call a Gaiden story, because it's sort of like a side story that it exists. Everything in the original timeline, it's just like has nothing to do with this, and this movie doesn't really rely on that timeline and either way. So it's there and it's nice to have, but I think that what I would have wanted was more from his story to actually be different here, because this is another case where the trailer gave away the first act. In fact, like everything in the trailer or in the first act was shown to us in a very quick way in the trailer of just the sort of the setup to get there. And I enjoyed that section of the movie. I was having fun with it, but I also felt like let's hurry it along here, because I already know what's happening. And when we get to the point where he finds out that he's been conned, what I would have wanted to see was for him to abandon his principles and just like actually go out full on, like, you know what, this is what I've been doing, and I actually put faith and hope into this cure, and these people completely upturned my perspective of things, and now I'm not even going to test them. I just want to full on get revenge on them. And we saw a scene in the movie where he is sitting in the park, and it's after he's had this fake operation, and so it's like, I have this new lease on life, and he's doodling a design for like a death trap. And he stops and he's just like, no, and he tears it out, crumples it up, throws it in the trash. And that to me says, like, I'm turning over a new leaf. I'm going to, I still believe in the things that I believe, but maybe there's a more conducive and less violent way to get my message to people. Like, that's what it seemed like he was hanging up his Jigsaw hat, if you will. Maybe. And then when in the next scene, when he finds out what he finds out, and he throws the bottle in anger. And it's just like, what are you going to do now? Like, I would think that in a scenario like that, if a person was challenged in a way, like, say, like, for just hypothetically, someone came into your life and they changed your life in a way, or just changed your perspective of things and really made you believe in something, and then you find out that it was all a lie, how would a person react to that? Would they change who they are or what they believe in, or would they just go back harder on, oh, this is what I'm going to do? And I would have liked to see a scenario where he actually is just like, no, fuck this, fuck them, and fuck what I've been doing, because this has crossed a line. And for him to actually get to a point where he is trying to, or just wants to get revenge on these people without actually testing them in that way. And for, a character like Amanda to just reel him back in and be like, no, John, like, this is the mission. We can't stray from that. To actually have him go on a journey and come back and then realize, no, I'm Jigsaw, this is what I do, rather than just expedite, like, it just became a regular Saw movie to me. And in that vein, it also kind of, when we did get to the traps finally, I felt like each one as they went along got weaker and weaker. Like, the first one was probably the most grotesque in just like the way that it was handled. Then by the time we get to the very last one, it was just like, that's all you had to do was stick your head through a thing. And the only other thing I want to say is I liked that doctor. I mean, like, I don't, like, she's awful. She's a terrible person.
I was just gonna
but
say,
I like
what? Okay.
She was so immensely watchable as a villain type, or just like as a, maybe even like a misunderstood character, because she was set up in no, like, she was put in this situation, and I wasn't necessarily sympathetic of her, but I was empathetic of her in how this has all happened, how your actions have led to this, and now they're affecting everyone else in this room with you. And then she basically, in the last 10 minutes of the movie, she turns into this mustache twirling villain. And I just like, oh, you can, like, I don't even care anymore. Just like, get the fuck out of here. And she didn't. And it didn't. They're making a movie where John Kramer is kind of like it's the first time really where he is in the protagonist seat, him and Amanda, where we're seeing it through their perspective and we're rooting for them in a way. And if the only way that they could do that was to like turn these characters into just like these cartoon villains, like I just felt that it was a very cheap and lazy way of doing it.
Interesting.
I would have rather John go on this journey of just like having this internal crisis, and it didn't happen. It was just sort of like, I'm the good guy, and we're gonna walk out into the sunset at the end with the kid or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a completely different. So now anybody who's looking for a contentious conversation, here it comes.
Here we go.
No, because I had a completely different experience. I felt like my mind was blown. I didn't walk in having seen the trailer, so I just knew I'm seeing the new Saw movie, and I know it's a gamble because I've liked a lot of them and I've disliked some of them, and we'll unpack that as we go through that franchise. But with this one in particular, I was so. Maybe it also came off the heels of seeing Exorcist, The Believer.
Yeah.
I had such a better time with this one. It wasn't a slog at all. I loved that I kind of got to watch people I felt I know now after seeing the movies that they've inhabited for as long as they have with John Kramer and with Amanda. And arguably even Hoffman. But it was the first time I was ever kind of happy to see Hoffman. Because also, I'm glad that I can bring him up because, like, to speak to what you were talking about in terms of, like, wishing you could see John Kramer kind of betray his morals and everything like that, that wouldn't have worked for me because that would have felt like a just kind of like arbitrary decision you're making for this character to now go off the rails in this like little off timeline thing you're making, this little pre-sequel that you're just kind of like putting in to kind of like show, but look, he did it once, and it's like I mean maybe there's a way to do it where he can kind of like learn his lesson.
But that's what I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying.
No, yeah,
because if there is an opportunity for them to do it, this is it. This was the justification for making this movie. That's how I see it.
That said, I kind of what this movie did was actually kind of make me. Because I am not a Johnny Jigsaw stan, I'm not going around saying like, yeah, man, that's the way. I'm afraid of him because, number one, there is a part of me that if I were stuck in a trap and he told me the reason why, I'd feel like I deserve it, but I'd also feel like, who the fuck are you to judge me? Why do you get to be the one who makes the decisions about who goes into the trap and who doesn't? So for someone who I have that much of a contentious kind of like relationship in my head with Johnny Jigsaw thus far, I was more on his side. I loved the pathway to empathize with him as a character and to see him kind of like go true to form and use it as a teachable moment with Amanda. I love just that thing of the two of them in the trenches and to see like their moral codes being kind of like torn asunder by the doctor when she wants to incorporate the boy into the situation, and you just see, and even the treatment of the junkie girl, whose name I can't remember right now. Was it Gabriella? Was that her?
Yes, that's what it was, yeah.
Okay, with the treatment of Gabriella and seeing how it resonated with Amanda, this kinship that she felt with her because she's a junkie and she was a junkie and she understands, but she also sees the path and she has to kind of keep her eyes ahead, like almost like a soldier, which I have my own, opinions about that too. But I mean, just as a means of being taught, just keep your blinders on and just do as I tell you. Don't question it. You have to just commit. But I loved how on their side I was. I thought the movie had given me enough to kind of, without endorsing what they do, to understand exactly where they were coming from and exactly why it was warranted, because I think I would have felt exactly the same way. Yet, I don't feel like something like that it would have to be done with an incredibly deft hand to make it feel justified for Jigsaw to go off the rails like that. I feel like it could go wrong so easily.
But listen, that's what I mean. Like, it's just, why are we doing these repeat stories? Why are we not taking the risks of doing that and having people just being like, okay, we need a deft hand. Let's get that. Let's actually have a reason for, you know, like we've now done tried to reboot this franchise twice, and that's gone nowhere. We're gonna bring it back. Like, let's do something that actually means something and actually tells a story that's justifying its existence. And I mean, I will say that I saw this weeks before I saw Exorcist. It took me a while to see Exorcist Believer. I just saw it yesterday from the time of recording this. And after seeing Exorcist Believer, like, I did kind of like, I'm like, oh my God, like, just in comparison, Saw X is so much better than that. But even the other night, I was watching Saw 2 and 3. I watched them back to back. And watching Saw X and then seeing Saw 3, kind of, as I was watching the movie, I was more so watching it through the perspective of John Kramer and Amanda. And this is like the first time I really appreciated Saw 3 more than I ever had. Oh, nice. And it really was like, this is Amanda's movie. And that, to me, like, everything that happened with them in that movie had more of an emotional resonance than, like, you know, things that happened in Saw X were just sort of like, okay, like, they're kind of like just planting this, or reverse planting the seeds, or just showing the earlier planting of seeds for what might pay off later on. And it didn't feel like it didn't go anywhere like it did with Saw 3. So I mean, I don't dislike this movie in any way. Like I said, I'm very much in the middle. Not that even it's an issue, because people can like what they like, but it's just baffling to me that movies like this are coming out on Rotten Tomatoes at like fresh, like 95%. I don't know what it has, but it's just like, really, like, it just seems odd that, like, what critics are picking and choosing as good, like Megan and Megan, that you know, I'm just like, no, but what are getting these fresh approval ratings, and then audiences who are just being uninformed about this and just being like, oh, well, Scream 6 is better than all the other movies because it got a better score. And it's just like, no, like, that's the kind of, like, film criticism I don't like. I want people to explore these movies and talk about them, other than like, oh, there was cool moments in it. And that, to me, is what Saw X is. It's just like, at the end of the day, like, it looks great, it sounds great. I think that they really captured the essence of the earlier franchises, but it felt kind of empty to me. And, like, the times where they were trying to fit things in, it was just, they were just kind of there for the sake of just, you know, like, oh, Amanda and John Kramer and that. So I'm torn.
Okay, because the thing is, like, it's interesting you using the word, like, justification, to kind of, like, discuss, like, the issues that you had with this movie. Because for me, the justification was in the fact that, like, everything that you addressed in terms of, like, tonally and the way it looks and the way it sounds, like, it felt like it was comprised of kind of, like, all the components that make, like, a good Saw movie. And the fact that they achieved that, and the fact that they reached back into the history and gave me a movie with a dynamic between two characters, Amanda and Johnny Jigsaw, that I really, really like and always wanted more of, and now I have it, that was justification enough for me. And also the fact that, like, purely, I don't know if it's aesthetic, whatever it is, just purely the sensation of experiencing a Saw movie in the theater in the month of October, that makes me feel like I'm watching a Saw movie in the bygone days of the other ones. Yeah. Like the ones that I enjoy. That was gratification also. I'm wondering if it's not nostalgia, because it is largely rooted in the experience that I had as I was sitting there. It's almost like stealing time, you know, being able to, like, pull something from the past and experience it again, but it's not. Yeah. It's like what I was talking about with Exorcist. The criticism for it, it was enough like The Thing. What I like about The Thing, but it was also different enough. Like, I mean, I loved being able to experience the humanity in that little seesaw moment where
Oh,
Johnny
the blood
Jigsaw and the
hoarding.
kid are doing with the blood stuff, and he's telling him don't pull and everything, but the kid makes the sacrifice, and my
God,
sister
it
is
was so
going
stupid.
nuts. She's just like, no, he told you don't pull. I'm like, he's sacrificing. It's a good thing. Like, he doesn't want him to die. And then John does it again, and the kid's trying to relieve him, but he won't, because he's throwing himself on the grenade, as it were, to save this innocent life because of his morals. And something about that I found inordinately watchable.
See,
like, I was
I would have been fine if that was the thing that kind of brought him back. That would have been fine, but just the fact that he never really went off that course. So
I didn't need him to go off course.
I did.
felt like
I wanted to
okay.
to have a. What about the doctor?
The doctor, my response to her, I didn't feel. I felt like she's more believable a person as I grow older and older. Yeah. The kind of person who is an opportunist and who will do whatever is the most, whatever's going to serve them the most at that particular moment. Mm-hmm. I bought every single second she was on screen, and just thought, but I felt like I couldn't trust her for 1 second.
Oh, not at all.
And I mean, the fact that like she was there encouraging them and everything like that, I'm like, just because you don't know what your trap is going to be, and you don't know if you're going to have to rely on them a little bit. And also, it's just easier to encourage somebody than it is. You're not going to show your cards, because what if you, like I said, what if you have to rely on them? You're going to need them, and they need to know that you're kind of on their side. And also, it is your fault that they're here. Yeah. This is your scam, and you hired them, you brought them in. So in order to keep them so they don't sabotage you, you got to stay on their good side. And the first opportunity you think you have a semblance of power again, you are going to just dig your heel in and just waste lives, and you're just going to be a reckless, destructive person because you're a fucking sociopath. I hate you.
I agree with everything. She was so interesting to me, and I agree with everything that you're saying, but I just felt like the movie itself, they're just kind of like, oh, we're going to make her like beyond evil, like just the getting like the kid and all that, and then stepping on what's her face's neck. Like it was overkill to that point, and just so ridiculous. And I hated that she did not get. I mean, spoiler-ish, but we've already talked about enough things that happen in the movie.
Enough has
but
been
just
spoiled. Sure.
Yeah. It's just like I said, like the every trap just seemed to get like tamer and tamer as it went on, and I was just kind of like, okay,
see, I didn't have that. I just kind of felt I wouldn't want to be in any of them, so I'm just going like, oh my god. And my sister and I were screaming. But shockingly enough, we were in Exorcist. We were in the theater with like maybe 3 other people, and it was just dead silence.
Nobody's went to
that. but for Socks, it was like Friday afternoon. I think it was Friday the 13th, and it was like, I think about 3 p.m. when it started. And so kids were still like kind of getting out of school and stuff like that, and getting ready to go see their Taylor Swift movie. Yeah. So we still had a kind of sparse audience. We had about 13, 15 people with us. But they were all silent during that too. My sister and I were like, ah! Like during everything with the thigh and and oh god, it was excruciating. I loved it. So all in all, it's a huge thumbs up for me as far as the experience. Only having seen it once though. Like I mean, I'll have to return to it. I may even want to bridge the gap because it is between 1 and 2, which is interesting to me. I thought while I was watching it, I thought, oh, this must be between 2 and 3, and then and I read on IMDb in and of itself that Lionsgate said it's between 1 and 2. And I was
John Kramer. I mean, I just watched them. Like he was in pretty rough shape by the end of 2.
That's
like,
true.
He was after what's his face beat the living hell out of him. So
he didn't look like he was in good shape in this movie either, though. Like he was. Yeah. He started off looking like really, really rough.
The thing is that like the first Saw in and of itself is just like that movie seems like it takes place over a really long period of time because it's going like sideways, fast forward, flashback. Like it's maybe him lying on the floor in the bathroom there is like this happened after the stuff in Saw X, but maybe the stuff earlier when he was. When he walked into the lair and Danny Glover and his partner came in, like maybe that was before this. Who knows? Anyway, I mean it's a thumb sideways for me.
Okay, it's a thumbs up for me.
Yeah, that's all right. let's start this slashers ranking thing. Do you want to go in alphabetical order, or just because we'll put the preview on for just a little bit here? Is there one that you wanted to start with? Maybe a big one, just to get the ball rolling.
No, but is there one that you want to start with?
I'm just looking at them. I mean, we can go in alphabetical order, but how about well, it's just because we've been talking about him. This is a good segue.
Oh, okay.
John Kramer. We'll start with John Kramer. Do you want to read? Sorry, I'm like jumping the gun here. Why don't you tell us about the tiers and what they mean?
Okay, it's always fun to drop down. So let's start at the top. First is a quote from Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, who says, "I am eternal." And I think it says it all. Like, legend, unquestionably, usually first name basis, people are going to know. People who aren't even fans and multiple generations know who you are. You're a legend. Yeah. So there's that. Just below that, I always lose his voice. Lead Cenobite. Okay. Demons to some, angels to others. I don't know if that's spot on.
You got it. Like you
lead Cenobite in Hellraiser, otherwise known as Pinhead. Demons to some, angels to others, but like still like rah 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 or boo picketing. Like you affect people. So not quite legendary status, but people. There are people who know your name and scream it. Just below that, next tier is Don't Fuck with the Chuck! And that's Chucky from Child's Play 3. And, I mean, it's... The only reason it's there, it is no indication as to my feelings about Chucky. I'm sure everybody who's watching and listening knows. Yeah. It's just about the phrase itself. It's such a gritty little self-aggrandizing, like, who are you trying to convince? Like, you're not legendary, and you're not even quite like somebody who gets people up in an uproar, but you're tough. You're a tough little thing, and you'll be the first to say it, probably, and the last, maybe. Yeah. And then just below that, we have a quote that I kind of mused over, but I don't know, it just fits for me. It's from Jill Roberts in Scroforum, just saying, "You just gotta have fucked up shit happen to you." And, with the vocal fry, which is maybe you're not the most proactive or prolific villain, but maybe your story is comprised of maybe a motive or maybe just fucked up shit happened.
That feels like more of a Final Girl line, to be honest, but.
No, but I mean, there are, but I think it applies to, because I mean, we do learn backstories of a lot of these slashers. Yeah. And I do think there's quite a few who, well, your kills aren't that interesting. No one really knows your name, but you did have some fucked up shit happen to you. So, like you deserve, you're not the bottom of the barrel. You got something, kid. And then, bottom tier is Norman Bates in Psycho, of course. As harmless as one of those stuffed birds, which is, I mean, granted, it's completely not true in the context in which he's using it, but in our context, it's basically like, who are you kidding? Like, you may as well just be stuffed in a corner. Yeah. Like, look at you, and it'll be interesting seeing who makes that tier. Yeah. So I'm excited. Yeah.
So John Kramer.
Yes, you want to start?
Well, I feel like we don't have to say too much background on him because we've already talked about him for forever. But I mean, I've always had issue with just sort of like the hypocrisy of just the idea that I'm not a murderer, I don't kill people, and it's even in Saw 2, because I just watched it, and Donnie Wahlberg says to him just well, if you put a gun to a person's head and make them pull the trigger, that's how is that not murder? So I don't know. That's just the first little issue I have with him. I've also kind of the idea of Jigsaw, I've always been confused about. I'm not confused, but I know that there's confusion over it because is Jigsaw Billy the puppet? Jigsaw, John Kramer is dead after the third movie. What is who is Jigsaw specifically? And I feel like there's so many different faces of what Jigsaw is, not just like in terms of like who is taking on the role of Jigsaw, but also in just like the like the pig mask, the Billy the puppet, all that, like him and his robe. It's just like it's there. There's not one specific thing that I can hone in on what Jigsaw is, and I don't know if, like, for the purposes of this, are we doing John Kramer or are we doing Jigsaw in general?
I mean, I generally went with the introduction, like, as far as like, but it doesn't mean that everything, that the whole mass, like, can't be considered. Like, if we're talking slasher, the slasher identity, arguably, that's what people refer to him. More people are going to say Jigsaw than John Kramer.
Yeah.
So I think you can encapsulate as much or as little as you want.
So this can include Amanda. It can include Hoffman, or just like any of those other people who take on the mantle. Yeah.
the prophets, but the apostles of John Kramer. I'd say the legacy, by and large, has definitely made its mark. But as far as... I'd be comfortable, because I think he's a little bit more powerful than Don't Fuck with the Chuck. I feel like I'd be comfortable at least putting him in Demons to Some, Angels to Others, because I feel like, aside from it completely applying, like that's actually true. Top tier. I think also looking at it, there's too much hypocrisy.
Yes, but looking at it in the aspect, and I might agree with you just in terms of placement, but like looking at it in the aspect of the franchise surrounding it, because I think that not that necessarily how many movies a slasher has is going to bolster their position on this, but I do think that Jigsaw has made a name for themselves, that we can. I think that it's iconic enough at this point, and it's a very much like of that era of like the 2000s. It kind of came out of there, and there's not really a lot from that time that I think that if you're looking for like slashers born in that era, you think of Jigsaw. So I think that just based on that alone, and just sort of like the reputation, I could say Demons to Some, Angels to Others.
Okay, because if we were to go I Am Eternal, because he is kind of, but if we were to go with that, I'd say he definitely needs to be near the bottom of that list. I say that without any premeditation. Like, I haven't made my list yet, so I don't know. But
we'll put him there. For now. Okay.
Demons to Some, Angels to Others. Nice.
Do you want to? Well, and now we'll proceed alphabetically at this point, because
sure.
Yeah. So next we have Alex Hammond. I believe is the character's name. I don't know if there's like a name for this killer. It's just like the ski mask, the prom night killer, from Prom Night. And we talked about this movie, and I mean, the only thing of like any merit that I will give this killer is that he might, like, we talked about this in the Prom Night episode. There's a very giallo quality to him. I think, in fact, he's like ripped right out of like giallo movies. Like, it just feels like that. Like, the ski mask is so basic, but there's something about the phone calls at the beginning that I love. Just like the way that he calls them up, and it's just like Wendy, or whatever he's saying.
I wonder why.
Yeah, like, it's just like it's there. I really love that. Everything else, like, whatever, he could be anything. So, I mean, let's hear your argument.
Well, I just rewatched this movie actually right before we started recording, because I needed to remind myself. I will say the reveal is memorable. Like, I saw the movie once, and I will never forget who the identity of the killer is, and the red herring of it all. So at least there's that. That's memorable. But I was trying to remember, like, is there a signature kill? I couldn't even remember if there's a particular look, or like, I mean, like the two contrasting females who we discussed in the movie are the ones who really stand out to me. And then, of course, the reveal at the end, and, of course, the aspect of disco. So, I mean, he kind of gets lost in the mucky muck. I do feel genuinely moved by his story, though, especially, like, at the reveal. Like, I was like, I felt my brow furrowing while I was watching the close of the movie, and I was just kind of like, oh, poor kid. He just, he went the wrong way about doing kind of the right thing from his vantage point.
He literally had
understand that.
fucked up shit happen to him.
He literally did,
and
so
that's,
I think
where I would put him.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay. Fun.
Okay, that's easy. Next up, we have Angela Baker from Sleepaway.
Okay. How do you discuss Angela? Love. I'll say, just laying it out, full on love for this character.
Yeah.
And again, we discussed her. We'll use that pronoun, plight, at length in the pod for Sleepaway Camp. So all I can say is horror fans, to horror fans, she is absolutely legendary. I don't know how many normies. I have to go off of kind of status.
Yeah.
I don't know how many normies would consider Angela of Sleepaway Camp a household name.
Yeah.
Which makes me think she might belong in Demons to some, Angels to others, just because she's not quite notorious enough. I mean, she's notorious among certain circles. And when you're in, you're in the club. You can't unsee what we've all seen. And I love everything about her. So I can't in good faith necessarily put her in I Am Eternal.
No, I would not. No, I would not.
Yeah.
And also, I haven't seen
the
2 and 3 or Return to Sleepaway Camp.
Haven't seen Return yet, but in 2 and 3, it's not even the same character.
Yeah.
So
does that factor in as well? Do we deduct points for that?
I mean, I would, just because all of a sudden it's a completely different, it's a complete shift in the impetus to kill, why you were killing originally, and now why you're killing because you want people aren't enjoying camp enough.
Yeah.
What is that?
I guess where I'm looking at it from is that Angela doesn't really have she has an amazing reveal, but she doesn't really have the monologue. She doesn't have the crazy episode or anything. It's just a lot of her, what we see is more so just very internalized. And I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily a fair thing to judge her by, because we do have characters like Jason and Michael who are completely internalized. Yeah. But I always look at her and just get the sense it's just there could be more. And there are moments like the one where she's like, I thought you were the killer, or, just, stuff like that I would have liked to see more fuckery from her. She knows what she's doing. 'Cause the whole movie, she's just kind of presented as this innocent wallflower, who's just pretending to not be the killer, but we're not really seeing her fucking with anyone or gaslighting anyone. She's just sort of, doing what she has to do, and then if someone upsets her, they pay for it.
Right.
The
movie doesn't show its hand in that, in that way. Yeah.
And that's why I feel like maybe I'm missing something from not seeing the sequels, but the way that you describe it, where it's a completely different character. I would say don't fuck with the Chuck, but I could also say Demons to some, Angels to others below Jigsaw.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Let's go with that. And then next we have the animal masked killers from Your Next. And
we have fox, lamb, and tiger.
Tiger, yeah. And these guys are just terrible. I mean, the good thing about them is that they kind of provide a comedic relief in the movie.
Right.
Just how horribly they are defeated at the hands of Aaron. But I feel like this movie is never really about the villains. It's more so about her. And even in that vein, I always remember the characters of Felix and Z more than I actually think about the masked animal people.
Yeah, I agree. Are they as harmless as one of those stuffed birds?
I don't think that they would be.
I mean, they do kill some people.
Yeah.
They do kill some people.
They do have moments, like, because it's like the first part of the movie, like they are threatening, they are menacing. But then it gets to a point where there's just a complete shift, and they do have like their moments of just like, you know, being creepy. So I would not put them in as harmless as one of those stuffed birds, but I don't think that they're interesting in a way that I would probably say you just had to have fucked up shit happen to you. The only thing that's like more like even just comparing them to Alex here, the only thing that's more interesting about them than Alex is the fact that they have masks with like characters on them, and the sense that I think like just their artillery is more interesting too. Like Alex just has the axe, or sometimes like I don't know if he actually has the shard of glass that he's holding up in the poster, but like they have crossbows, they have machetes. They're like they're prepared for something more. And there's also an argument, like, are they really slashers though? But I mean, they don't have like cool little gimmicks like, you know, the phone calling stuff or anything. They're more like home invaders than they are slashers.
Right, but I would argue that I think they're more efficient killers than than Alex is, purely because like while I was watching Alex pursue our girl Wendy, she outran him for a long time. Like that just kept going and going and going. And Wendy, you know, she's resourceful. She's our cherry on top. Yeah. But I mean, she's got heels on and an evening dress, and she's still able to kind of like outrun him and foil him and you know, hit him and all that. Whereas like the animal mask killers, like they get through quite a few bodies before they kind of come up against Aaron in a way that actually slows them down and then starts picking them off. So I think they're arguably more effective than Alex Hammond. Maybe and maybe just as memorable, because I do think of I actually do think of them when I think of the movie, just because of that poster with the fox head. That's
fair. Yeah, you know what, you're right. Okay, so are we going for you just gotta have fucked up shit happen to you?
Yeah, because they do, and they're just over Alex, I'd say.
Yeah. Okay.
All
right. So I think we're going to cap the preview aspect of this episode. So thank you for watching or listening to our ramblings about Socks and Exorcist Believer and the few rankings that we've done so far. But if you do want to watch or listen to the rest of this episode, please head over to my Patreon and support us there. You're really doing God's work, helping us out with the podcast, because this stuff, it ain't easy, and we appreciate every little bit of support that we do get here. And yeah, there's bonus material, so we'd really appreciate it, and I promise you guys will have a good time. But other than that, thank you for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week for what's the regular episode.
Oh, we're doing that one where trick or treat, motherfucker, right?
We are doing Halloween Resurrection.
Halloween Resurrection
for our released on Halloween this year. We're getting it out of the way. We got a lot to say about that one. So if you don't stick around for the Patreon episode, we'll talk to you about Halloween Resurrection next week. So thank you for listening this far.